Good morning, all. Welcome. We're going to wait while everyone joins. I'm Rabbi Zac Kamenetz from Berkeley, California. Welcome all. If people want in the chat to let us know where they're from, where they're joining us from. We're so grateful to have you here. All over San Francisco, Toronto, Michigan.
Also, if you know the indigenous land you're on, it'd be beautiful to share that as well. I'll share a link if you don't know that.
I'm here on Ohlone land, specifically the Chochenyo. Thank you all, Palo Alto, Montana, Mill Valley, Amsterdam, the world over. Mexico, San Francisco. We're so glad you're here. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Seems like we're everywhere. I'm Rabbi Zac Kamenetz, founder and CEO of Shefa, Jewish Psychedelic Support. And on behalf of the co-founders and organizers, Madison Margolin, Natalie Ginsberg, and myself, we welcome you to the inaugural Jewish Psychedelic Summit. In the words of the hero of the Zohar and whose passing we just celebrated on Lag BaOmer, Shimon Bar Yochai, Vai I Galina, Vai I La Galina. Woe if I reveal, woe if I do not reveal. What can we say about this moment that means so much to so many of us? How can we limit with the letter to describe the depth and breadth of everything that has happened to bring us here? All the hands, the hearts, the love, the work from our indigenous ancestors who have passed down their wisdom and stories, those who have worked underground for decades, those who have devoted their lives to research, to healing, to exploring the recesses of the mind and spirit, those who work within the systems. Inspired by all of this, guided by your lives, Madison, Natalie, and our team offer you this container for all of the blessing that you have already brought into the world. Now, here at the first summit, we can see just how big that bracha is. Faced with the ineffable, the beyond and the beyond within, I offer only my gratitude and awe and wonder for being part of this moment. And now it is my honor to introduce Rabbi Shefa Gold to give the opening Birkat Shalom, a blessing of welcome and peace. Rabbi Shefa is a rabbi, a scholar, and director of Sea Deep, the Center for Devotional Energy and Ecstatic Practice in Jemez Springs, New Mexico. Rabbi Shefa.
Great, thank you. I want to open with a moment of silent prayer to honor those who died on Mount Meron on Lag BaOmer. We open in compassion. And then we open to the source of compassion. Allow it to flow through us for this historic summit. V'nahar yotzeh me'eden lahashkot et hagan. Our ancient text illuminates the ongoing mystery of creation. Our holy book tells us there is a river that flows from Eden, the source of delight that waters, seeds, nurtures, and grows the garden of this earthly realm, the garden of our lives. That river is always flowing. It is God pouring herself out to us. My own encounter with psychedelics about 47 years ago showed me what it was like to open to the divine flow. That river is always flowing. It was my conditioning, my training in what was deemed normal, my constraining of perception, my buy-in to the particular values and habits of a particular time and culture that limited my receptivity to that flow and removed me from God's transforming touch. Under the influence of psychedelics, I was given a profound glimpse of a larger reality. In that glimpse, I was touched, seen, and undone. The Song of Songs describes that undoing when it says, Libavtini achoti chala. You have ravished my heart, my sister, my bride, with one glance of your eyes. Just one glance. And then what? What happened next? I returned to the smaller reality and became profoundly doubtful of all those limiting ideas and narrow perceptions that had been foisted upon me by a world that pretended that it was all there is. That glimpse of a larger reality sent me on a journey of discovery, healing, adventure, and the possibility of an ongoing, moment-to-moment direct experience of creation, liberation, and revelation. And then Judaism gave me a path and a language and stories that I might reinterpret in the light of that glance. It showed me that my ancestors also had glimpses of a larger reality, and they also struggled to reconcile a mind-blowing experience of the divine flow with the limiting cultural norms of their times. Libavtini. Through psychedelics, I learned to surrender my illusion of control and let my heart be ravished. In the ashes of my small self, a vision of my larger self could emerge, and then the holy work without drugs could begin. The work of keeping my heart open, the work of creating practices from the raw ingredients of my inheritance that help me stay open to the divine flow, turn my receptivity into generosity, the work of becoming a clear channel for God's love to flow through in the forms of kindness and justice. Libavtini achoti chala. You have ravished my heart, my sister, my bride. You have pierced my heart with a beauty that dissolves my defenses, clears away every artifice, and opens me to blessing. We come together to honor a vision, to let the glimpse send us to healing, to the exploration of the vastness of consciousness that is ever expanding, and to the transforming embrace of Ahava Rabba, the great love. I pray that this gathering will focus not just on the high or the chemical substance, but on the doorway that we might pass through into unity consciousness. How will we live in the light of this extraordinary experience? How can a Jewish spiritual path support that journey of love? So I want to chant together with you these words from the Song of Songs to lay the foundation of our time together. The words, Libavtini, you have ravished my heart. You have touched me. in such a way that I am transformed. Let us enter into this summit with these words. Li baftini achoti chala, li baftini achoti chala, li baftini, li baftini, li baftini, li baftini. Join me.
Rabbi Shefa, thank you so much. That was really beautiful. And thank you, Rabbi Zac, and thank you everyone for being here. My name is Madison Margolin. I am co-founder of this summit. I also co-founded Psychedelic magazine Double Blind. I write a column about psychedelics for Rolling Stone, and I've been a journalist covering the intersection of psychedelics, cannabis, and Judaism for the past 7 years. And part of my inspiration for getting into that beat had a lot to do with the way that I grew up. So my dad is a quote unquote Hindu. He was in India with Ram Dass and their Guru Maharaji. And he also, as a marijuana defense lawyer, had clients like Timothy Leary. So needless to say, my upbringing was colored by a lot of really interesting characters, psychedelic people, hippies, and Jews, and most specifically Jews who were looking for spirituality everywhere except Judaism. So Hinduism, Buddhism, Burning Man, Rainbow Gathering, just not Judaism. And so as a kid, my parents all throughout still had sent me to Jewish school and then Hebrew school. And I was always wondering if what my parents and their friends were searching for in other traditions was actually available within Judaism. And so that kind of led me as a journalist to investigate Jewish communities all over the place, looking for people who were reaching these ecstatic, transcendent, connective heights through a Jewish framework. And what I found was that Judaism really can be and is an expression of, and a reflection of, and a container for altered states of consciousness. And you can achieve that with or without the substances present. But what I've found through Shabbos and the Chagim, or the holidays, is that Judaism offers a container, a set and a setting to have these expanded states. And in my own experience personally, having done plant medicine circles and having nigunim being sung during those circles, so nigunim being ancient Jewish tunes, I found that to be incredibly grounding and helping me root to myself and my ancestry while also kind of soaring these great spiritual heights. So in my reporting from the West Coast to the East Coast, to Israel, India, beyond, we found all these communities, and part of our intention with this conference is to really gather the sparks, the nitzotzos, and coalesce them in service of this movement that already exists and that is growing. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to my dear friend and colleague who I actually met on a cannabis farm in Israel, Natalie Ginsberg.
From the cannabis fields of Israel to the virtual realm of the Jewish Psychedelic Summit. Thank you, Madison, and thank you, Rabbi Zac. It's just been such an honor to be able to work closely with you two on this amazing summit. And thank you, Rabbi Shefa, for that really powerful opening. I'm honestly a bit overwhelmed to be here and so grateful with over 1,000 people who care a fraction as much as I do about the intersection of Judaism and psychedelics. For my day job, I work as the Director of Policy and Advocacy at MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. And I've been lucky to be working to end the war on drugs and advocate for psychedelic research for almost the past decade. And in that time, I've encountered so many Jews in the space and so many Jewish leaders in the space. But I was definitely not the first one to pick up on this. President Richard Nixon was recorded saying in 1971, "Every one of the bastards that are out there for legalizing marijuana is Jewish. What the Christ is the matter with the Jews, Bob? What is the matter with them?" I suppose it's because most of them are psychiatrists. And not that this anti-Semitic question warrants any type of response, but what is the matter with the Jews? I might posit one of the things is that we have survived thousands of years of oppression and persecution and life as refugees. So I suspect our intergenerational trauma has motivated many of us to find healing in psychedelics and cannabis and reform. Not to mention that a year ago, we did discover cannabis on an ancient Jewish altar outside Jerusalem dating back to 800 BC. I believe a really key part of healing our intergenerational trauma is about connecting to our Jewish ancestral traditions and lineages. And speaking of ancestry, I do have to take a quick moment to say hello to all 4 of my grandparents who are listening in from Florida to Vermont. And really, our intention with this conference, as Madison spoke about, was this gathering of the sparks of the Netzotzot, of the really wide-ranging Jewish community that is interested in psychedelics. From the dozens and dozens of rabbis who have signed up for this summit, interested in exploring spirituality and psychedelics and potential integration into their work, to the completely secular Jewish psychonauts who are curious to understand more about their lineage and how this might interact with their psychedelic spiritual practices. So I could go on for so much longer, but unfortunately we don't have so much time, and I'm deeply honored to be here to also introduce my boss, Rick Doblin, who is the founder and executive director of MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, which actually celebrated our 35th anniversary last month. Rick has played an instrumental role in resuscitating psychedelic research through his passionate advocacy, his movement building, his commitment to eliminating political barriers to research, and his commitment to conducting drug development research with psychedelics. Now, MAPS is super close to FDA approval for MDMA therapy to treat PTSD in the US, in Israel, and Canada, and soon many more countries. Rick, I'm so grateful to work with you for so many reasons, but your strong Jewish neshama and commitment to healing trauma in Israel has really been such an added blessing for my work with MAPS. So I'm curious today, can you tell us a bit about how Judaism has shaped and inspired your work in psychedelic reform?
Wow, what a wonderful event that you and Madison have put together, and the rest. I just am very impressed with what you're doing. And I do think that Judaism needs kind of an ecstatic revival, and that psychedelics can be a big part of it. And it's interesting to think just briefly about how Hasidism began as part of that move away from the people of the book to the people of experience, but how that can even get solidified into dogma. So we have to be careful when we talk about what we're going to do with psychedelics to avoid that kind of, descent into dogma. And so for me, though, I had a great-great-grandmother move to Israel, Palestine, really, in 1904. And she went there to die and be buried on the Mount of Olives, which she did in 1907. And then my great-grandparents moved to Palestine in 1923 and built a house on Rothschild Boulevard that's now a historical site. And they did that in 1924. So I've had relatives in Israel for a very long time. And as a result of that, I also had relatives that were there fighting in the 48 War for independence. And so that was something that was impressed upon me as I was growing up, that life is a struggle, that the Jewish holidays are often about, they tried to kill us, we survived, now let's eat. That's the common joke. But I was really raised on stories of the Holocaust. And that was what I would say was my primary influence, was just this recognition that there is this kind of scapegoating of the Jews that's been through thousands of years. And that I had the sense, my father's hero was Saul Alinsky. So we grew up in Chicago, and Saul Alinsky's, very community activist, very much influenced President Obama. And that got this whole sense of tikkun olam. And so I was raised with this idea that I was the product of multiple generations of immigrants who came to America on one side in the 1800s, 1880s, on the other side around 1920 from Russia and from Poland, and that this kind of historical connection to being refugees and then to sort of making it in the US, you know, the American dream. And that I was given this sense that my parents would support me for survival needs, basically for food and shelter, but that I was charged in a way with these generations going before me to work on deeper threats to the Jewish people than beyond just, you know, food and survival. And so that was kind of the download I got from my parents. A big shift though happened for me during my bar mitzvah. And that was just a very disappointing situation for me because I was the oldest of 4 kids. And I had the sense that this ritual would really turn me into a man, that there would be some dramatic transformation. And I remember sitting in my bed the morning after my bar mitzvah and thinking, where is God? Where is this revelation? Where is this transformation? I didn't really feel that. And I felt that this ritual, this outer ritual, hadn't touched me in the inner dimensions where I thought it should. And so I thought maybe this was a busy Saturday and God was busy. There was a lot of people that got bar and bat mitzvah, and it would take a while for God to come around to me. And so the next morning I would wake up and I would be the same, and it would be every day. And then finally it was a whole week, and it was a next new crop of people bar and bat mitzvah. And I was like, I don't know, I'm so far down on the line. He's not going to get to me. But as I went through high school, I kind of realized that this kind of ritual didn't really engage, and it may have in the past, and I believe it did in the past, but for me, it really didn't. And then when I started taking LSD and psilocybin when I was 17 and 18, I felt this was engaging those same energies that my bar mitzvah should have engaged. These existential questions of who am I, of where do I fit in, is what is my purpose, what is my connection beyond me to spirituality. The psychedelics started doing that for me. And I wasn't prepared really for that. And so I ended up going to the guidance counselor at my college when I was 18. And he was willing to acknowledge the validity of my quest in a way. And he gave me a copy of Stan Grof's Realms of the Human Unconscious, which felt to me like science looking at spirituality, looking at healing, and having this overlay of reality check of therapy. And so that's where I felt like this was this spiritual, the sense of the mystical experience, the sense of connection beyond our egos to the wider world, to the natural world, to nature, to people of all kinds, to animals, to the whole life on earth. That I felt was the antidote to the Holocaust and the antidote to the Cuban Missile Crisis and destroying the world through nuclear weapons, the antidote to what my own country was doing in Vietnam. That I felt that if we could have more people have this sense of connection. There's a great album by Rita Marley, Bob Marley's wife, and the title of the album is Who Feels It Knows It. And what that told me is that you can have the intellectual knowledge, but if it doesn't sink deep into your psyche, into your experiences, into your emotions, you're not really fully knowing it. And so I also felt later on this idea that 18, I'm going to devote myself to tikkun olam, to working on psychedelics, this multi-generational opportunity I had. Then I'd say the last step in this process was a dream that I had in my 20s. And this dream was of a Holocaust survivor who was saying that he was miraculously saved from death. He thought he was going to die. He was machine gunned as part of a bunch of people put into an open grave. This is in the dream. And that he was miraculously saved, but he didn't know why he was saved. He didn't know what his purpose was. And then I saw this whole story. He took me to this whole incident. And then we came back and he's talking to me and he said, now I know why I was saved. I was saved to tell you to be a psychedelic researcher and to try to bring back psychedelics. And that in my mind, I was thinking, I've already decided that this is what I'm doing. I can say yes to this person, and then he died in front of my eyes. So I've always felt that this kind of antidote to the Holocaust, this mystical sense of connection, that was my mission, and that it was both a Jewish mission, but also a global human mission, an animal mission, a nature mission. But I think it was really the Jewish thread that really motivated me to my activism.
Wow, thank you. And I really always love, like, you bring up this quote that mysticism is the antidote to fundamentalism, and that's something that's really shaped me. So we only have time for one more short question that I know probably warrants a much longer answer, but it's something you started to touch on a bit. As you said, once you started having psychedelic experiences, you had it kind of shifted your experience of, or you had new opportunities for spirituality. So I'm curious, when you started having those spiritual experiences, how did that change your relationship with Judaism?
Well, it made me, first off, my parents, we grew up in a conservative synagogue, but my wife and I and our kids were in a Reform synagogue. So what the psychedelic experiences helped me to do was to move from, again, this literalism to symbolism, in a sense, that I could engage in these symbols, but in a universal way. So I felt like, yes, Jews are the chosen people, and that, we have this special mission to, be a light unto the world, but everybody has that mission. It's not just that the Jews have that mission, that it's something, a universal way. There was one moment when I was in the Dome of the Rock a long time ago, on the, where the old temple was. And it was a time where Jews were still let in. Right now, only Muslims could go into the Dome of the Rock. And so while I was there, I was thinking, can I pray here to spirituality, to God as I understand it, as a Jew in this Muslim space? And I felt that I could. I felt that this was something that was very deep and shared, and that it wasn't betraying my Jewish identity to be in a Muslim space and sort of praying for all of us. I had another moment where my wife and I, right after we got our betrothal ceremony in Israel, we were on the top of Mount Sinai doing MDMA. And this was with a friend, a Jewish friend who had a Muslim girlfriend. And we just had this moment of realization that we were all feeling this love for each other here on the top of Mount Sinai, but that we were making every religion upset in a way. My wife was not Jewish, although she's agreed to raise Jewish children. My Jewish friend was with a Muslim woman, and it just felt like this love is transcending, that the love can be through the different religions. There was one time, and this I think was a really important moment, is that I did MDMA at Purim in Jerusalem. And this was a wonderful experience right near the Supreme Court. It was an underground parking lot surrounded by police to get in there because of security concerns. But then it was decorated by one of the Jerusalem art schools. And we had this rave the whole night, and it was beautiful. But in the morning at sunrise, I thought, I'm going to go to the Western Wall in this space. And so I went myself with a friend, both of us who'd done MDMA, and we were there at the Western Wall. And there was these two ultra-Orthodox young kids who were drunk. They were, that's a big thing on Purim. They were massively drunk, and they were trying to approach the Western Wall in the same way as we were, but they were loud. They were, I guess you could say that they were drunk, and they were, but it just felt I felt so grateful to God that I had a different set of drugs that could bring me to this spirituality. And so when I went to the Western Wall, I felt like what I ended up praying for was my next LSD experience, that it would go well. But I felt that I could bring my Judaism to these holiest spaces, and that it could be mediated, interpreted with a psychedelic lens, that I didn't have to say that this psychedelic lens somehow or other excluded me from Judaism. And I just felt this contrast in a way between, alcohol and MDMA, and how there was a quieter sensibility that we had. And so there was just this wonderful sense for me that, that, well, you know, one time Zalman, Rabbi Zalman Schachter, permitted me to do MDMA in his temple in Philadelphia, in his congregation on Yom Kippur. And, you know, I felt again that the kind of atonement that you need to do, that MDMA is a perfect complement to Yom Kippur. You know, I felt a little bit like I was cheating because it took away my hunger. So, you know, I worried about that a little bit. But overall, I just felt like there are ways that we need to experience deeper than the literalisms, and that the psychedelics can do that, but it can be infused through a Jewish lens, and that it's not in contrast to that. And that I think has been for me the biggest learnings, that you can move deeper to that, to a universalism. I think that's the question. I grew up in Chicago right next to the Baha'i temple, you know, and the Baha'is and the Sufis are kind of like the mystical equivalent, you know, of Jewish psychedelicism, you know, but they're also endangered in many different ways in the Muslim world because they're not true believers in a certain way. They have a more universalistic perspective. So I think that's the thing I'd like to end with, is that you can have your own individual identity, your own cultural background, your own specific symbol systems, and at the same time, you can celebrate other people's religions, and you can share with them in the devotion and in the sense of mission and duty, and that it's not fundamentally in conflict.
You're on mute, Rabbi Zac. Classic refrain.
Yeah. Haha. Thank you, Rick, for those words and anecdotes and stories. Thank you for bringing in the spirit of Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, who is whose neshama is hanging over this and in this event in so many ways. Thank you to Natalie and Madison and Rabbi Shefa and Rachmiel for helping birth this moment for all of us. We are very excited to also, we're also very excited to offer our, this is great, the ability to thank our sponsors. I can't get the screen right, whatever, this is happening. To thank our sponsors, to thank the organizations who are supporting our work. And we encourage you to go to our website and to check out everything that they are doing, all of the wonderful work in this space. We want to thank everyone for being here. We will see you very soon for our opening panel. And we hope that you'll get comfortable for an amazing day of wisdom, of debate, of Torah, of spirit, of heart, and of blessing. Thank you so much. And we'll see you very, very soon.
Thanks, everybody.